My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is a special production of Discern Realities. Listeners, we have been reading through the contest entries for the Shrine contest, and we can't decide who the runners-up should be. We have so many good entries.
Judging this contest has been hard as fuck. This was significantly tougher than the previous contests we have held, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like by a mile, actually. Like, it's really hard.
I don't know if it's because we were really specific about what we wanted, and so people gave us really specifically what we wanted, and that's making it harder, or if you guys are just getting better at writing them, or if you put more time into it. I don't know.
I think it was maybe the constraints of the contest. I think it maybe forced people to think really carefully about their entries, and it paid off. I mean, so we had 44 total entries, which for a contest of this scope is really good, right? Because each of these is 400 words, right? And has multiple elements and descriptions and stuff. And so that was great. Really, we consider that a really good response. And then on top of that, so okay, let me back up. 44 entries. I would say after my first pass through them, I had about 15 or so where I was like, any of these could win.
Yeah,
right? Any of these could be the winner.
I had 12 when I got to that stage.
Yeah, and even beyond that 15, my initial 15, there were another 10 to 15 more where I was like, this is really good, they maybe didn't make my 15 cut for different little reasons, but what I'm getting at is overall the quality level on these entries was great. We saw some amazing entries. But we had to whittle them down. And so David and I agreed to try to get down to 6 each and then basically compare notes to see if we had any matches, right? And I should tell you that, I don't know about you, David, but I did mine anonymously. I basically pulled all the entries into a separate folder without names and then just read the entries without knowing the names of the people who did it. I thought that was better just because I know so many people who were participating and I didn't want that to influence my thinking on it.
Yeah, it's absolutely better to do it anonymously.
Yeah. So here's the thing. David and I got it down to 6 entries each. And between our 2 lists of 6, we only had 1 shrine that was on both lists, which again should tell you how good the entries were because we had such divergent lists, right? We had a lot to choose from. Mm-hmm. We had 1 shrine that ended up on both lists, and that shrine is the winner of the contest. It's the overall winner of the contest. We've decided we are not going to reveal what shrine that is on this recording. Not yet. That will be revealed later. But we were left with 5 remaining finalists on each of our lists from which we were each going to pick a runner-up. And honestly, it just felt like it would be, I might as well roll a die or just randomly choose one in some way because I like them all pretty equally. And it would have been weird to have to choose one. And so we got thinking, well, what should we do? And so what did we choose to do? So
this is what we're doing. We're making you do the work for us.
We're going to make you guys choose. Yeah. So before we get into the specifics of what we're doing with that, I thought it'd be fun just to talk a little bit about kind of generally speaking, what our personal criteria was for this contest. What sorts of things were you looking for, David?
Okay. So after I got down to 12, here's how I narrowed it down to 6. I read my 12 critically for which ones had all the elements, and I believed that that all the elements were interesting and useful and I would use them in a game. So already they've got all the elements. Now it's these are the elements I will specifically use. And I looked very carefully at the mechanical implications of the moves at that time. If one had one good item and then one item that I was I wouldn't use, I chunked it out.
Even if the rest of it was otherwise great.
Even if the rest of it was outshining thematically. That was just a way that I had of paring down the number of entries I had.
Yeah, mine was pretty similar. To get to my 15, I was mostly interested in just how evocative the shrine was. I was very interested in the theme of the shrine. I was very interested in the thematic consistency between all the elements. Did the shrine match the description? Did the nature of the moves and the magic items, did it all fit, right? Did it tell a story, basically, is what I was kind of aiming for in my choices. And Got it down to about 15. I began to pare that group down a little bit. For a few of them, I got rid of them because they didn't quite follow the instructions of the contest. So I had a couple that I loved, but I couldn't justify like making them a finalist because they either went way over on word count or they didn't give us like quite what we were asking for, right, in terms of like the structure of the contest. And so while I love them, I was like, I have to kind of make this fair for everybody. And so now there was one exception there. Somebody asked me if they could do like a slight wrinkle on the format, and I made an exception for that. But in any case, for the most part, everybody followed the instructions. And so that just got rid of a couple. And then from there, I just started going like with a fine tooth comb, like mechanically, does this move work? Is this a thing I want to see at my table? That kind of thing, right? Do I think I would actually use this, or is this just like a bit of puffery, right? Like what is I started to ask those questions, and I got it down to 6. There were a couple that I really, really loved in terms of their theme, but they were so, I just could not imagine a situation where I would get that out in play. Like some of them were so esoteric or something, even for like a contest about a fantasy, setting or whatever, right? Like they just seem so a little too fictionally specific, right?
Yeah, there were some that were like really good. They were almost like poetic in what they were, the ideas they were conveying. And for some reason or another, I would come to that and I would read it and I was like, that was awesome. And then I was like, where would I ever run that?
Yeah. So it's definitely a bit of a subjective process for sure. But ultimately, I was looking for thematic consistency throughout the entry. I was looking for usability at the table and mechanical soundness. Mm-hmm. So and how evocative they were. Mm-hmm. We have 2 remaining groups here. Okay, 2 groups of 5. David's remaining finalists and my remaining finalists, and we are going to put them to a vote for the community. So you guys can go on G+ and vote, read all the entries and vote for which ones you like best. And then the winner of each of those votes, one from each of our groups, will be named a runner-up, and they'll be invited to come co-host the show with us, just like we said we would. But then also, because we're kind of putting these up for we're kind of making them compete again in a way, we are going to throw in a little bonus. And so the winner of each group will also get a $20 gift card to drive through. That's what we've decided to do here.
Yeah. And we will put those links up on the same day that this launches. So be on the lookout for that. And if you know that your shrine is one of the shrines that we mention, don't tell anyone that you wrote it, but feel free to vote.
Right. Yeah. Don't campaign for your shrine. Okay. Like we don't want people to know like who wrote them when we put them up. So as far as this little episode goes, we have more to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the groups. We're not going to read them. We're going to assume that you guys are following along with the text because you're going to have the text of the shrines. But we're going to kind of just say a little bit about what we liked about each shrine, just so you have that little bit of extra context from us. And then with that in hand, and then having read the entries, go find that G+ post, cast your vote. You will have until Friday, June 16th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time to cast a vote.
Awesome. Then without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my finalist entries.
Okay, so we are going to go through David's remaining finalists from the contest. David, just real quickly, these 5 shrines are in competition with one another on the vote. Real quickly, what are the names of the shrines?
All right, so I'll read the 5 that I have remaining. Solaris, Observatory, the Altar of Kar-Suet, Mamon, and Gnozinu.
All right, so which one's first?
We're going to start with chatting about Solaris.
Generally speaking, what is it about, and then what'd you like about it?
So Solaris is about a trickster who was not actually a god, was so convincing that they tricked all the other gods into believing that they were in fact a god. So they started to begin to be worshipped as gods, and now people who know this truth about the world and worship Solaris for that trickiness, they can become incredibly effective at tricking other people. They can, in fact, offer up a magical item and get modifications. As long as people believe it about the magical item, it gains the ability. So it's really a lot of this idea of like manipulating others and being charming. It's very, very charisma based. And that's why I chose it. I thought that it told a very consistent story with its item, its spell, and its mask of lies, its magic item. What did you think about that?
I liked it. It was part of my bigger group, and not my final 6, but it was part of my bigger group. And yeah, I really liked it a lot. I thought I liked the idea that like everything kind of works based off what other people believe, right? Which I thought like fit really well into the overall sort of theme of the shrine. So yeah, I thought it was cool. Okay, so which one's your next one?
All right, so next let's go into Observatory.
All right, the Observatory. Tell us about it.
So the Observatory is really like a Cthulhu, Lovecraftian horror style of shrine where people have taken steps to make sure that it does not get worshipped at. But if someone chooses to worship at it again, they may risk disturbing the Lovecraftian horror and inviting it to influence their lives. So I was into that. It comes with a really powerful magic item that's a weapon, but using the weapon invites even more danger and disturbing this ancient one into influencing your life even more. And then it additionally has a second magic item that could give you information if you use it. But once again, if you use it, the void might stare back at you or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I liked about this one too. It's a real push your luck kind of shrine, right? Like you have to get the powers of these things. You have to be willing to basically expose yourself to essentially going mad, right? I mean, that's basically kind of what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I thought it was super evocative, the sort of like Lovecraftian nature. I don't know how explicit that is, but it's definitely there. Like if you're reading,
it's there.
Lines, right?
It's not. Yeah. Like it's got this motif of like ancient things and tentacles and things like that, and it's like clear, I know what's going on here. You didn't have to say it, and I love that.
Yeah, super, super cool. Awesome. What's next?
The next one is the Altar of Kar-Suet. This is a very classic altar that is a snake god, and the snake god, like, has no respect for his followers. He just is more amused by them than anything. And it's very classic in that, like, what you do at the altar for the move is you drag somebody there and sacrifice them, and then something happens.
It's super Conan, right? Like, it's got shades of sort of swords and sorcery to it for sure.
Yeah. And the spell and the magic item are right in there where it's like, this is what you would get from a snake god. You get ways of like bringing snakes into the world and using snakes to attack. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's really well written for one thing. That's one thing I like about this one. It's very well written, and it's just kind of gross, right? The magic item especially is like really disgusting, in that really like squirmy, squicky way. Yeah, I'm really into this. It's just wicked and fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, what's next?
So the next one is for Mamon, and Mamon is a god of orphans and lost children. But he's a very strange looking god. He has 4 arms, and it's just kind of like scary. So it's like, it's interesting to me to think about like why that would be the god of like orphans and lost children. But he would basically, the shrine is all about helping the spirits of orphans and lost children. And the magic item helps you do that by helping you kind of track them. And then the spell...
The spell's the oddball thing here,
The
right?
spell is what happens where like you get to kind of look like and channel that energy of this 4-armed god by growing an additional pair of arms.
Right, yeah.
That's like... that would like just be instantly recognizable as like, oh, you worship that god. So I thought that was pretty great.
I'm very fond of the theme. I think the opening description of this one is really good. It really like sets the tone for this. I like that the basic thing you're doing is helping these like spirits of like orphan children. You're kind of like providing comfort and succor to them. I think that's really great. And then I actually really love the spell, even though the spell is so weird vis-a-vis the other things, because the other things, the spell just gives you 2 more arms, right? But I kind of like that because it's really D&D-esque. That's another way of understanding the god, right? It's like, okay, I'm using this spell to become a physical manifestation of the god, right? And so I kind of like that. It's like okay, we're into the sort of like thematic concern of the god, but we're also into this really literal like sort of like representation of the god too, which I think is great.
Yeah, that was pretty unique from this entry.
And finally,
Gnozinu.
All right, Gnozinu, what's that one all about?
Gnozinu is all about this machine god, this large drilling device that these gnomes worship. It will continuously just drill into the ground and create tunnels and unlock like areas that had previously been lost. And interacting with it like gives the players the opportunity to kind of unlock dungeons and go into those dungeons and find good stuff. And then it has a magical item that's like a little bit off of this drill that's like incredibly dangerous and volatile that you could use to like influence a siege or something like that. And then the last part is another magic item that is Gnozinu's spawn. So it's like a smaller one. And by small, I mean 6 weight, which is enormous. That could be carried somewhere else and would eventually grow into another Gnozinu machine that would drill down and start creating tunnels and unlocking dungeons and all this stuff. I love this one because I instantly, as soon as I read it, it was so evocative that I was like, I know exactly what I would do with each of these things, and I can see an entire adventure around exploring these gnome catacombs that have like been buried. I could see influencing a siege or something else, breaking through a wall with this bit, and then having to like help bring this Xenu spawn somewhere else to like a gnome holy site, and like let it grow and protect it while it grows until it starts to dig down. I was really into it, and I also love the idea that, like, these gnomes might just be really mistaken, and this is just a really ancient piece of technology that they worship.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's a great set piece. I like this one a lot. It's really fun. Just a really fun, terrific little set piece. You can have a whole adventure based off this.
Yeah. So those are my 5. Please, listeners, go and pick which one you think is the best, and that would be our runner-up. With that, let's move on to your list, Jason. So, Jason, you have 5 picked that none of them are on my list, but I liked all of them. So what 5 do you still have?
I have the Cliff of Shuachi, the Idol of Sprague-el, the Shrine of Niseria, the Shrine of the Abyss, and the Shrine of the Unwritten. All
right, so which one of those do you want to tell us about first?
Let's start with the Cliff of Shuachi. This is essentially a sort of wind god, I guess, and the shrine is like a cliff. And the way you interact with the shrine is you tell Shuachi a painful memory, and then you jump off the fucking cliff. That is so dramatic, and I'm here for it. It's super dramatic. It's super intense. The 6- result is not defined, which means theoretically it could send your ass straight to the Black Gate, right? Like if Shuachi does not lift you back up. So I love the theme of this. It's a little dark, but then like the outcomes, if Shuachi lifts you back up and sets you back up on the edge of the cliff, and therefore receiving Shuachi's blessing, can be a little bit more positive, because your pain is kind of healed or whatever, right? I just love that. And then the items just further emphasize this idea of like wind and thoughts and the wind affecting things and moving things around. And I just think it's great. I just think it's super dramatic.
Yeah, this one was on my final 12, and it was hard to eliminate this one, but just running it through my criteria, I was like, okay, I guess I've got to split one more, but oh my gosh, it's so awesome, especially with that 6- condition being left kind of blank. I don't know if I would just kill my players for jumping off, because it's like I kind of want them to, but
you could go in different directions with it. But I love the implication, though. I think it's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my next one is the Idol of Sprague-el. Okay, so the Idol of Sprague-el is actually just like a little statue, basically, right? A little statue of this robust bearded man, Sprague-el. And the idea of Sprague-el is it's all about stories and teaching and wisdom, right? And whenever you sleep near the idol, he'll visit your dreams and regale you with things. But what I love about it is the move is really subtle, because depending on how the move goes, it affects the information that you learn from Sprague-el's stories in a really interesting way. In particular, on the 6-, he overlooks something important about the story he's telling you that's actually really dangerous to you, but he forgets to tell you, which I kind of love. So I think that's great. And then the item, the Ribbon of Epic Return, it's just a bookmark, and I kind of love that. I always love like this idea of sort of like natural magic, right? And so I kind of find that like sort of the mundanity of it to be really like charming. And then the other thing is a spell which lets you kind of like pull out some information from Sprague-el's sort of like vast personal library. So it's just really well written, very evocative, just and kind of pleasant and fun.
Yeah, I like this one because if there was like going to be a good like minor god, this is a good minor god, like a little household god, you know, where you'd have like all of them, and this would be one that you might not overlook. But then if you were actually a sincere worshiper of them, they're pretty useful. Yeah,
not all the gods, these don't all have to be like big heavy things, right? They can be like kind of like, you know, that's what I liked about the scope of it. I thought was really pleasant.
Yeah, and it really painted that picture in my mind of like a family that would have lots of gods that they worshipped. What do you have next?
Next is the Shrine of Niseria, goddess of thieves, cheats, and con men. This is a great shrine. The goddess thematically is pretty reminiscent of lots of sort of like thief gods that you might know about, right? In the ways that it helps you like the moves and things like help you kind of like work your way into things. They're things that are like helpful to thieves, right? Which I really like. The reason why this one appealed to me in particular is it's beautifully written. The opening text is so evocative and it's very suggestive of like a certain history, and it just reads beautifully. It gets you in the mood, and it really kind of gets your imagination firing off. And the different elements, the move, the item, the spell are all they're all very thematically consistent and well written and mechanically sound.
Of all the entries, this one is my favorite for its opening text. It has the best opening text, I think, of all of them. I love how it describes the shrine. I like that the spell does something different. It is, in fact, a thief spell, so that's completely different. It's not a cleric spell or a wizard spell. It's a thief spell. That was very clever. And that's, it's a good shrine. What's your next one?
The next one is the Shrine of the Abyss. The Shrine of the Abyss tells like the sort of ancient story of the origin of man, right? That we all came up out of this black, hateful mud, and it's always trying to pull us back down. So it includes details of like every time you jump, the force that causes you to fall back to the ground is the abyss, right? Like the abyss is constantly beckoning, it's constantly pulling you down, it's constantly wanting you back. It's incredibly dark, and I love it. The thing I like the best about this is many of the elements in this one it's kind of a fundamentally cursed, like it's this abyss, this stuff is like kind of not good, and yet you kind of can't escape it because it's meant to be like very primordial and elemental to our nature as people. But what I like is that most of this stuff lets you pass it on to someone else. So it's a little bit like that movie It Follows. Like, you know, you've got this thing chasing you, but you can kind of like pass it on to somebody else to get away from it for a bit. I just think it's incredibly dark, and I could just see so many cool situations arising in play just because of some of the things that happen at the shrine and stuff. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's really, really dark, and as a thing that the players can encounter, it's more of a hazard than anything. yeah, I'd just be really curious what would happen if someone were to worship here.
Yeah, it's exceptionally dark shrine, and I'm really into it. I just love this idea of this like this sort of force that doesn't care about you, just constantly trying to pull you down. I'm really into it. So,
and then that just leaves your last one,
the Shrine of the Unwritten. So this is really interesting because it's not actually focused on a god. It's more a shrine of an idea of what could have been. And so the shrine is all about adventures that the stories of which were never told, right? Either hidden adventures or hidden stories, unfinished tales, unfinished travels. I just like that thematically. It's really well written. It's super, super evocative. And yet when you go to one of these shrines, which are just like filled with leftover things, things that like are, chipped blades and water warped scrolls and other like bits of detritus, basically. Whenever you find one of these quote unquote shrines and you sort of handle the things and engage with it, you can actually learn a little bit about your own personal quest, right? Unless you get a miss, in which case you get entangled into a failed quest. So like one of these failed quests kind of like wraps you up into its sort of negative mojo, right? And you get caught up in the failed quest. And so I'm really into this. I think it's different, it's unique, and it tells a story. So yeah, I'm really into it.
Yeah, it's really a sad place, this shrine.
Sad, yeah, it's really sad.
All these items are things that did not fulfill their purpose and cannot fulfill their purpose. It's very tragic.
Yeah, super tragic. So those were my 5. Listeners, go find my post on G+ with the poll and read these and make a vote.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason.
Oh, thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's going to be our show. Please go to G+, find our 2 posts, and make a vote for these winners.
Yeah, as a reminder, you have until 11:59 Eastern Time on June 16th to cast a vote on one of the polls. Please, if one of your selections is on there, don't tell people, do not campaign, and we're going to have comments turned off too. We don't want you guys discussing these. We just want you to read them and make your vote. To everybody who participated in the contest, thank you so much. This was a fabulous contest. The results were terrific. I could have picked a dozen winners easy.
Oh yeah. I can't wait to see what all you decide, and we will find out the end of June 16th.